Arteta! 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 Arteta!
This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. And we have a new head coach. And it is Mikel Arteta. Comunicado Oficial de Arsenal was the tweet. I wondered if it was maybe saved in drafts for a year and a half. But it has, in fact, come to fruition. And our intro, which for so long had people sort of wondering, are you going to update it? Are you going to update it? Well, now what do you think, huh? Now it's timely as can be. That's right. Arteta! That's it. It is Arteta. And I, for one, am thrilled, and we will talk about that. It's going to be sort of a fireside chat today, just me and Clive on the podcast. So Clive's on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
Yeah, it's a celebratory day. And I mean, I know that not everybody feels entirely the same about this. Here's what I will tell you. Yesterday for patrons, we did a pod that dives into a little bit of the process, questions about how the club conducted the process, about Raul and Edu and Stan, excitement about Arteta, the state of the squad. It was more of a state of the union, state of the club kind of podcast in light of the fact that we expected this announcement to come today. This pod, I think what we will just do is try to stay more tightly focused on Arteta being announced, on his first press conference, on his first interview, and our reactions to it and our excitement for what is to come, because that's really what's going on. So I will simply say that we have a couple things going on. You can win a year of our Patreon. You can win a year of The Athletic, and you can win an Arsenal shirt. All three things are up for grabs at arsenalvisionpodcast.com/win, sort of our Christmas giveaways. So, definitely head over there and enter. It doesn't cost you anything to do it, obviously, and we'll be giving all that away. And obviously, if you're already a patron, we appreciate that, but you are eligible, obviously, to win the free year of Patreon. We'd love to have you over on Patreon. Clive, who is here right now and can speak about this if you'd like, is going to be doing some transfer window pods. We'll also have some of our special guests from the summer back, a lot of the talent scouts from Y Scout and StatsBomb and stuff like that, coming on to talk about players that are out there. So it should be an exciting period in terms of all of the players in world football that we will not sign. And then last but not least, if you want to get someone to sing, and I have been pushing for it to be Clive, but it doesn't have to be, you can sign up for The Athletic. You'll get a month free, half off, and you can do it at theathletic.com/ClivePAFC, Stilberto, Yankee Gunner, and Paul AFC. And whoever gets the most votes that way will wind up singing our Christmas song this year. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so let's do it. So Clive, I mean, first things first, there's really a couple different bits of media out there introducing Arteta to the club. There is the actual live press conference for the media, and then there's the first interview that was on the website. And I think there's interesting things in both of those video clips that we can dive into. But what I want to do just your very first sensation at Mikel Arteta being named head coach of Arsenal, and how you react to the news before, diving into what you expect from him or how you reacted to any of his interviews.
Yeah, well, first things first, just put a little bit of context. I'm not a kid. I'm not 16, 17, and I don't easily get excited, right? But I have to say, I'm beyond excitement, and I almost didn't expect it. And the reason why I'm excited is he sounds like exactly what's required. He keeps talking about connection and energy and culture and all the things that we speak about. And he just gets it. He just gets what's missing. And the people that understand the problem statement and really understand how to approach a role, how to approach leadership, understand what that cycle looks like, I could just tell straight away he knows what he's walking into, what he needs to do. He's talking a lot about understanding people. I'm a big believer in there are different ways of coaching. And a big part of coaching for me is a part that is all about emotional intelligence, how you connect to people, how you engage with people, how you understand people. Because when you understand people, you can provide an environment for them to thrive. And he obviously wants to get in, talk, understand the players, understand what's missing, understand what's wrong, correct it, say what his culture is, and say, by the way, are you jumping on board? Because if you jump on board, the words he used was, this is how we're going to live. And that just stunned me, that was. I mean, that's exactly it. If you're at Arsenal, it's a life. It's a lifestyle. Don't come along and make it a chore to be in this environment. make it a privilege. And these are the things that just set my heart a racing.
Yeah.
And when I talk about coaching, that's what we talk about. What Klopp has done, hasn't he? He's connected that club, and we're talking about connection. And we talk about the layers, and we talk about the connection to the fans, and we say it. But when you hear it, when you feel it, it hits you. And it really hit me today. Really hit me. Even though we knew it, to see someone get it on day one and articulate in a way that I really believed in, I'm beyond excited, honestly.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there are times when we get so caught up talking about the minutia of running a club, the minutia of analyzing a player or a coach, tactical minutia, that we lose sight of some of the more grandiose elements of being a fan. And I think Arsenal fans are maybe more guilty of that than most, because we've had to get PhDs in economics to understand why the club is underperforming, and we've had to get PhDs in analytics to understand why the tactics aren't working. And we all know our XG, and we all know Swiss Ramble, is notifications on Twitter and all that. But there's an emotion about things, and you should like your club, like your players, like your manager, even at the lowest moment, I always liked Arsene Wenger, the person, and that made me more inclined to want to stick with him. Now, by the end, I was ready for him to go, certainly, but I like Mikel Arteta. I liked listening to him speak. I like seeing him communicate. He connected with me in these interviews. He is somebody that I am happy to see being the coach of Arsenal. And I mean, I don't want to make everything in this podcast a compare and contrast with Unai Emery. It's hard not to, because much like we compared and contrasted Emery with Wenger, Emery was the last coach of Arsenal and Arteta is the new one. I don't know that I ever warmed to Emery, and that may have influenced my analysis of him, although I would argue that the results and the performances were in step with that. But liking the guy matters. I mean, Clive, is it fair to just say, you know what? It's not my job to hire the guy. It's not my job to run the club. It's my job to be a fan and like the club and like the team and like the coach, and I like him. And at a very base level, liking the guy is a good start.
Yeah, it's critical to getting a job, right? So I mentor young people looking for work, etc. And I always say to them, when you go for an interview, make sure that the guy likes you at the end of it. Because I'll make sure you can sit on the plane with that person for 3-4 hours and they'd like to sit on the plane with you. I think it's very important. It's just an element of engagement and liking. And remember I said quite early on with Emery, regardless of what he was doing on the pitch, I used the phrase that nobody loved him. Remember that one?
Yeah. Me most of all.
Yeah, but you can still support your club even though you don't love the coach, because I felt he was brought in, to do a particular job, which is get us into the top 4. I felt within 2 years. Obviously, it derailed after 16, 17 months. But he was brought in to do a job. And that's when I started calling him the cleaner or the caretaker, because I felt we were going to go through massive change, and more change than even I suspected. And we wanted somebody that we almost didn't care about at the helm. Do you see what I mean? It was somebody that just had
disposable.
To do the ugly job. Exactly, disposable. We cared about the results, but can we ever say we massively cared about him? And I respected him as a football coach. I think he's a very good football coach.
Do you still? I mean, can I just ask you for a second? I mean, when you look at what he did with this team, do you not think it's fair to say that he made some serious mistakes in the way he coached the team, and that it's not just that the players didn't try or didn't care? I mean, I saw players who tried to execute a plan and failed.
You had to say. I said to you, I think he's a very good football coach, right? So, being a football coach, and listening to what I said about an introduction about Arteta, there's a different ways of coaching. There is the authoritarian, you do this, we're going to do this, over analytical way. And there's the guy that we met today from a coaching perspective, somebody that believes in messaging, somebody that's emotionally intelligent, connectivity, wants to bring people together, far more collegiate. It's just a stylistic thing. In the end, results matter, right? But what I did like, and what we didn't hear before, it was very difficult for him to say. He can't talk about the loss of identity or the culture changing because he hasn't been part of it historically. He can't connect to us in the same way because his background is different. We haven't got that history with him. He hasn't played for the club 150 times and captured the club and won 2 trophies with the club. So there is that connection, which it may sound a bit, so what? If we lose next 5 games, will I be saying that? But actually, I felt today it does mean something. It does mean something to how you feel. Now, just because Emery didn't work out in the end, this guy is a world-renowned football coach. You don't have to like him. You know, we can pick him apart even when he made his, good decisions, bad decisions. We don't have to like him. But I'm not going to, there were periods in this, in his reign where I think he does some good things. There are periods where I think he does some bad things. I'm not going to say, well, good, I don't like him, I'm going to analyse him differently. No. I'm going to analyse exactly what I see. When the players disappeared from him, it didn't matter what I thought anymore. It didn't matter what I think what he's like as a coach, because you've lost the dressing room. What subsequently happened is those very same players are still not on board of anyone's bus. They're on their own bus. I think that's the big challenge to Arteta, to come back in and really fix what's broken. We've got a divided dressing room, a divided club. We have issues in that dressing room, and it's obvious by the way we play, and that needs to be fixed. And I think that's a byproduct of many individuals, and not just Unai Emery.
Yeah, well, all right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that came out in these interviews, and that distinguished Mikel Arteta. I think, look, Tim made this point on Twitter that one of the exciting things about Arteta is because he's never been a head coach, we don't know what his flaws are, so we can't look for them and focus on them. One of the things that followed Emery around his entire Arsenal career was that David Cartledge Twitter thread of what Emery did wrong during his time in Spain and at PSG. And, we kept looking, every time something would go wrong for Emery at Arsenal, you'd dig up a match report from PSG or a tweet about a game in Spain, and you'd say, see, this has always been the issue with him. So I think Tim makes a good point that with Arteta, we don't know what his flaws are. So everything is about his possibilities right now, and we're not going to be looking for a flaw. If the team concedes a goal down the left side, we're not going to say, well, see, there's his flaw where he's always allowed goals to be scored down his left side. We're not going to have that level of granularity in analyzing his weaknesses. But what I really do believe was a shortcoming of the previous regime was a failure not to connect with fans. We know about that. But to connect with the players as individuals. Lots of reporting about how Emery would prefer to be alone in a video chamber, a room watching video, than be with the players. And that he didn't want to instruct them and communicate with them, and that they were sort of fungible to him. Arteta, one of his first comments in his interview on the .com, he talks about being like a heart surgeon, and that each player is like a heart that he's operating on. And he has to scratch that area and see how it works and understand that individual, and then understand what that individual needs to thrive. And I think that is exactly what this team needs, because it is a weird conglomeration of youth and experience, of people that think they're stars and people that have been stars and maybe aren't anymore. And I think it does need an individual touch for individual players. How important was hearing that for you, and his willingness to really care about the individuals? He spoke about Pep and what he learned under Pep, and how Pep made everyone feel so special as long as they did the things, that were the minimum requirements. I mean, is that a critical change to start to stitch this squad back together?
Yeah, he's talking about how he's going to build an environment, isn't he? That's just a base layer of building an environment, and it's wonderful to hear. We never heard that before. We were so focused on making sure we don't fall off the face of the cliff after a generational manager had moved on. And what we heard was somebody struggling in the language to articulate himself and talking about other teams more so than our own team. And I think we lost a bit of our identity. And Arteta said that today. He was asked the question, "Do you think we've lost our identity?" And he said, he answered it hesitantly, and he said, "I'm afraid I think so." He said, "I sat here last week and I saw the sad faces on the crowd, and it upset him. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, trust me, it was very upsetting watching that Man City game last week. And hey, look, it's a stylistic thing, right? There are people that coach groups really well. They never look anyone in the eye, but they capture the whole group. Right? And there are people that, they're the sort of people that can manage large organizations. They know everything but no one. Do you know what I mean? No, everyone hates him. You don't buy him nothing at Christmas. You just don't like him, right? But they still manage the firm, and the firm goes on to great things, whatever it is. You know, I've worked in a corporate environment. I've seen those type of leaders, those managing directors. I've also seen ones that have the personal touch, that understand you, want to give you programs that work for you. And he's obviously somebody that's far more individual. I use the term emotional intelligence, engaging with people, understand what makes them tick. That's great. That's one thing. But you can't have an environment for an individual environment. He has to create the standards. Those standards have to be consistent. Within those standards, you have a level of individuality about how to treat people, right? So, but in the end, he wants to connect with you to say, this is the requirement. Are you on board? I need to know. If you're on board, great. If you're on board, this is how we're going to be. And that's when we haven't had that even during Wenger's time. Let's be honest. He was far more of a soft manager, creating a very relaxed environment, which really did drive creativity of football. You know,
it requires you to have players of big character to thrive. And I think when we had big character players, they thrived. And as the character of the players maybe changed, it became more like having the substitute teacher at school. They went on recess, you know. Absolutely.
You know what? You mentioned something about, I've been reading lots of stuff recently, and Arteta said he found it a bit weird at half-time sometimes in Wenger's dressing room because it was so quiet. He wouldn't say anything. So he started taking a leadership role in team talks at half-time. You know, he started to coach some of the sessions because he felt Wenger was a little bit distant. And that was a problem we used to have, somebody that was so powerful in the club that maybe he neglected the actual core part of the role, which was coaching the first team. You know, this is one of my big frustrations. I wish Wenger had recognised his own development and went upstairs and became far more holistic over the club, and then developed his successor and actually let his successor have the run of the team. And he might still be at the club today, but what he did was try to do everything, end up dropping the whole ball, right? So that's a shame. So that's just a personal regret I have, to let a man of that sort of stature leave the club after 22 years, and he's just gone. All that knowledge is gone from the club. Now we have to rebuild that culture again with different people, bringing different skill sets. We have to give them time and patience to grow sort of organically once more.
Yeah, one thing that I think he has going for him that Emery maybe didn't, or certainly lost, is that at this point, and I said this in our Patreon pod yesterday, but I'll reiterate it because I don't have an original thought anymore. But I think the thing that Arteta has going for him is that the players have sort of lost the fans a little bit. So if there are players that aren't on board with him or don't respond to him the way he needs them to, and he decides that they're not going to play for him or they're not going to be part of the team, I don't think there are any sacred cows in this squad with the fans right now. You know, I mean, Emery was muddled in his thinking relating to players like Ramsey and Ozil, and I think he got it in the neck from fans for that. I think at this point, we kind of have the attitude that all these players are bums. I know they're not, by the way. I'm not saying that, but I think we're kind of fed up with them. And so if Arteta feels fed up with any of them, I don't think any fan will have a problem with him making an example out of any player at this point, with very, very few exceptions to that. So I think that part works. One of the things, look, I am very on board with the Arteta hiring. I am not necessarily on board with the process by which we got there. We're not going to dive into that. And I'm not saying Arteta is the best candidate in the entire field of coaching candidates in the world. Having said that, I am very satisfied with this selection and excited for it in a lot of ways, emotionally, intellectually, tactically, short-term, long-term, you name it. One of the things, by the way, that really impressed me, Clive, and then I'll get on to the next point, which is about experience. They asked him, what are the goals? What are some things you need to do? And I think that they were looking for things like, I want to inspire confidence in the players or get them to trust me or get the fans on side. And you know what he said? He said, win football matches. And I love that because it is so easy for a young coach starting out at a big club that's struggling to grab onto that excuse of having time. Right now, what we want to do is just instill a style of play and educate and slowly build confidence and then eventually see that bear fruit. No, he's like, I got to win football games. I'm a football coach. I got to win football games. And I love that because it takes a big responsibility to walk into the mess that is Arsenal right now and not hide and not say 8 million things that are your short-term goals that none of which are winning football games. Because I would be fine. I'm the one sitting here saying, this season's probably a wash. Let's just see if he can instill some pretty football. He's not saying that. He's saying, I need to win football games. And I thought it was interesting in the Raul and Edu interview, which I thought was mostly just trash, But Raul did say, we think that there is still time to amend this. It is not yet halfway through the season. Now, I think that's extremely unfair on Arteta if you're expecting him to get us to top 4. But I like that the club is not taking the comfortable attitude of the season is a wash. Fans can take that attitude because we're not having to run the club. But I like that the new head coach isn't. So on the issue of experience, people who are concerned about this appointment have rightly pointed out that he has no experience. And I think that is totally fair. There are questions about assistant coaches going on to be effective head coaches and managers. And I think, again, totally fair. I don't know that I share the concerns. He was asked about it. And he gave good answers, I think, in both the press conference and in the interview with the .com about it. And one thing I like is he said, look, I'm not going to try to convince the players I have experience. What I'm going to do is give them the tools. I'm going to tell them what I need them to do. Then when they do those things, they need to see that it works. And if it works, they will trust me. And this is the fundamental thing that I think broke down with Emery. Emery asked them to do something, and they did it. And then he asked them to do something different, and they did that. And then he asked them to do something different, and again, and again, and again. And I don't know how you build trust with players if you don't even trust your philosophy. I think he's right. I think experience is not what gives players trust. I mean, okay, if you walk into the room with a huge reputation, if you are Pep Guardiola, fine. If you're Jurgen Klopp. But if you're Mikel Arteta and you give them the tools and you tell them what you need them to do, and they do it, and it wins them football games, and it achieves the results, they will trust him. So how do you feel he responded to the issue of experience, and do you see it the way he laid it out?
Yeah, I do. Up to a point. I think just to touch on the Emery thing, I think Emery had those players, most of those players, for the most of the first season. But like you say, when you're asked to do certain things and it doesn't lead to the end result, which was the Champions League, you heard me say before, I think Emery died in Baku. Simple as that. You look at the players' faces, you look at his faces. It was done because they followed him and they did not get their Champions League bonuses. Right? Trust me, players care about these things. They did not get their bonuses. They did not get what they wanted to get to. They didn't reach their sporting ambitions. Their trust was broken. Things happened over the summer, and it just permeated into the start of the season. Now, with Arteta now, we can't look. Tim's point was brilliant, actually. We can't look back on what he's done previously. So for us, we can only look at this page and take today as the first time we've heard him speak in a position of authority. And I want to hear some cold-hearted people not be impressed with that, because it's impressive, right? If you're looking and listening properly and taking away any thoughts you have about who he is, it's impressive. When Arteta came up the last time, I wasn't singing he should get it. I thought he wasn't ready for it. I thought he needed someone more experienced. That experienced guy didn't work out in the medium term. So this guy is now more experienced, seems to be more understanding of the problem, and I'm not concerned about it. And the reason why is because it's not the same job that Wenger had. It's got a bit more stability than even that Unai had. I mean, how many people left since he actually joined the club? We seem to have. It's going to be a Edu, and Arteta show. And so how they divide up those roles, what the connectivity is between Edu and Arteta is going to be what we're going to judge them on. I think that is really, really key, because we haven't really seen Edu in all his glory yet. We know he's been there 6 months. I mean, that came up in the interview. That connection between those two is going to take away the level of fear some people have around experience. Another thing that's going to take away that fear is his coaching staff. Who's going to be on that staff? There are rumours out there, but I'm not too sure which one to believe. But it'd be very interesting to see the makeup of that staff, to see, because I think sometimes you learn more about the Arteta, because he's covering himself with people that maybe have things that he doesn't have. And I think that's going to be interesting, because those people are going to add to the culture, and it's going to be interesting to see how they are received, because we care about this stuff now, don't we, as fans? We care about the detail of the coaching staff. I mean, there's a guy named from Brentford today that may be on the staff. I went straight on and Googled him up, right? And Ornstein said he was very, very impressive, and I'm thinking, great, I don't know who he is, but I'm looking. So we do care about these things. These details do matter, and I think when the whole picture's together, I think we can judge a lot more then.
Yeah, well said. All right, so, gosh, there's so many things that I want to discuss about this, and we could go on all day. Just talking tactically for a minute, he didn't get into specific tactics too much, at least that I recall from these interviews.
No.
And again, not as an excuse for my incoherence, but I am dealing both with a medical condition known as strep throat, which some of the Europeans, Clive, are you familiar with strep throat? Do you call it something different over there?
No, we have something called strepsils, a throat sweet.
Yeah, maybe it's streptococci, nothing like that.
No.
I mean, you have it.
Explain
I mean, it exists. I'm sure it's just called something else. It's common if you have kids in, daycare age. Not that this is not the Arsenal Vision medical podcast, but combine that with the newborn, and I'm sort of just holding it together mentally by, as you can see, paper clips. But he didn't get too much into tactics. But one thing he did say that I think is so important and was such a big part of what we did lose over the last year and a half was instilling fear in teams that come to the Emirates. And I mean, I think he took a big, long pause when he was asked if Arsenal lost its attacking identity, because I think he was cognizant of not wanting to be disrespectful to Emery in that moment. But he did say, long pause, unfortunately, yes. And then he talks about instilling that fear. And I think that fear is a hint of what he might mean in terms of how he wants to approach it, being more front-footed, being more attacking. I mean, is the biggest excitement you have for him coming in being a return to football that you identify as being more traditionally Arsenal football?
Yeah, you said earlier about winning games. I know you didn't mean it literally as this, but I think we found that not just winning, but the whole process is really important about how we do it. Because I can remember sitting with you and the guys, we were going for that 22-game unrepeat and run home, and you were not happy. You were not happy. You were telling me why this wasn't good. We were focusing on the detail beneath the detail, and we weren't happy with how we were doing it. We were enjoying it, but we weren't really happy.
Well, and we knew that one of the reasons we weren't happy is just not only because it wasn't aesthetically pleasing, but we didn't feel it was sustainable.
Yeah, I was one of the ones on the more positive side to say, like, we can do this. If we do this, we can do it. January really disappointed me with the Denis Suarez thing. That disappointed me a lot because I felt we were close in a year when other teams weren't so great, and we didn't do our jobs. We went into Arsenal land, and that just annoyed me to death. And then we ended up falling over ourselves towards the end, and so. You often hear me talk about this. How you feel is everything. It's everything. It makes people buy tickets. It makes people make different choices in their life to fill up those red seats. My mate Wells is getting a ticket for me for the Chelsea game, and I'm bothering him to make sure he gets it. Because I've got a feeling it's going to be a packed house. Because after hearing that press conference, it's going to be a packed house. And the 12 pins is going to be bombing. Right, it's going to be, and how's that happened? Because we feel differently. Well, I do anyway, and I hope I'm speaking for more than just myself. We feel different. The process is important. The journey is important. Words like consistency, words like ruthless. I love that. That's exactly what you want. Consistent approach, standards that everyone can see. Standards only mean something when they apply to everyone. They're not standards otherwise. We can't have people sitting at home when other people are playing. We can't have people having sick days off when other people are playing. It can't happen. It has to be consistent. It has to be an environment which is right for everybody.
My one caveat to that is I agree, but I think that in Unai Emery's Arsenal, consistent meant same rules for everybody, period, with no attempt to really understand what each individual player is about emotionally and really connect with them. And it was very much one size fits all coaching. If you train hard, you play. If you don't train hard, you don't play. I do like Arteta talking about being a heart surgeon and scratching that area and seeing what they're about, because I think at the top level of football, it is naive to think you can treat everyone the same. I think if you're coaching at a lower level, even then, you might have to, look, everybody knows, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a coach, some people thrive. Clive, if you've ever played Football Manager, right? Some of them thrive on the arm around the shoulder. Some of them thrive with, with a rocket, right? So rocket up the ass. So it's like, you have to be able to be flexible that way.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. And that's what I've alluded to from the start of the pod. How you deal with people emotionally is the key for me. I could not coach unless I can connect to people. I just couldn't. I'm no use. Unless I can get to know the people, get to know the players, I'm not a coach. I'm not. When you get to know someone, when you get to know their game, how they move, what they care about, what they like doing, when you analyze some individual, then you can coach them. That's how I do it. Right. So people that coach from textbooks and can put on drills, I can't do that so well. Other people can kill me on that, right? So I think maybe we had a freestyle coach in Wenger that was much more a father figure and maybe a nice guy, maybe too nice in some respects. And then we zigzagged the other direction completely with Emery, someone a bit more authoritarian, a bit more less caring, didn't feel people as he should have done, hence why there are rumours of the staff being upset and not feeling connected to the club. Lots of people got kicked out of the club because the club went through change. This is why I called him a cleaner. When this is all happening, when people are losing their jobs and you still got to come into work and it's a bad environment, someone that cares too much is not good in that environment, right? It's too much change, too much people that are, just normal people losing their jobs, people around the club, lots and lots of change. Maybe we needed that type of hard-nosed git for the first change after Wenger. Now we zigzag back a little bit the other way. We have someone with a ruthless edge, but a history of what Arsenal used to be in the Wenger period from a playing perspective, from a people perspective. And I know it's only day one, and I'm a little bit excited, but I like where this guy has positioned himself for his first press conference and his first interviews for everyone to look and listen to.
Yeah, well said. Let's do this. Little surprise for everybody. We're actually going to pull Paul into the last 30 minutes of the pod so that we can liven it up with some inappropriate comments and crazy analogies. I think that's what's been missing. Otherwise, the chat seems fine to me. But, the other thing that's missing, we have a sexy manager. Now we need some sexy drawers. So we'll take a break to tell you about some sexy lingerie that you can get from the Enclosed. And when we come back, Paul will join us to talk more about Mikel Arteta. He's not your Arteta. He's not my Arteta. He's Arteta. God, that's bad. Stay with us. More after this. All right, it's time to tell you about our friends at The Enclosed. That's right, Enclosed Lingerie is back, and we are thrilled to have them back for the holiday season because it's just in time for you to get something for your partner. Forget the flowers and the sweaters or something like that, especially a gift certificate. Now you can get them high-end luxury lingerie from The Enclosed. You don't have to wander through a mall awkwardly. You don't have to worry about the fit or the quality because it's always going to be backed by a perfect fit guarantee. And we can get $35 off your multi-month purchase just by using Arsenal at checkout. Just go to enclosed.gifts. That's easy enough. Enclosed.gifts. Be a holiday hero. Get her what she wants. It's something that's great for the relationship. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be high-end and fit perfectly every time. And then every month, you can look forward to that thing that is going to bring you closer together with that special person. So, enclosed.gifts is the site. Arsenal is the checkout code. Go there now to save $35 off any multi-month purchase. Enclosed.gifts. Do it now. All right, we're back, and now we are joined by the man himself, Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pause in My Pants. Hello, Pause.
Woohoo!
All right, so just right off the top, Paul, Clive and I have spoken about this. We are excited for Arteta. We are excited by what we've seen. Before you give us any analysis, just emotionally, it's one thing to think about something happening and conceptualize it. How excited are you about Arteta being announced as Arsenal manager, head coach?
I'm pumped, absolutely pumped. There's how good is it and what does it mean for the club? But we support teams just because we're fans and we get excited and we get attached to ideas and players and just what you feel a club is all about. And just on raw excitement level, I don't know if this is the best possible appointment we could make, though, me, I'll argue it was. Excitement-wise, this is it. I think he's absolutely brilliant character. I never shut up about the fact that I wrote a blog in apparently October 11th, 2012, predicting that Arteta would be the next manager after Wenger. It was a little tongue-in-cheek, but I almost got it right, but I'm one manager off. He's just always had the it factor. And the thing that sparked me for that particular blog that I think is salient is there was a video back then. You couldn't hear any audio, but it was just Arteta and Wenger standing in the middle of the pitch before the other players came out. And Arteta is kind of gesturing positions and players and kind of body position and where a ball, just like you see with Pep, just that energy. And I'm like, holy shit, that is not just a player or the captain talking to Wenger. He in the same way Pep does, he embodies the whole game. And you don't just see a player standing there. You see a guy flowing the whole game through himself, this life, this vigor. I'm like, holy crap. And then you start to see him in games talking to Ramsey or talking to some young player, and you see the hands going, and it's the economy of movement. It's his, you can just see the life in his coaching, the energy he transmits. And then we talked about yesterday the importance of his ability to be able to sell his vision kind of internally, externally in press conferences. And we saw that today. And it's just like, I thought this would be a good press conference. Holy shit, after a few prepared remarks, it's all off the cuff. It's all just him flowing. And you understand that he has the it factor. And I thought he did, but he reminded me in levels you can't quite capture till it's live. He just has it, and he can communicate it, and he lives and breathes this. And I think it's going to be infectious. So yeah, I'm super pumped.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think that the nice thing about Arteta being the coach right now is that at least for a little while, we know him as a person a little bit. I think with Emery, we really wanted to get to know him, and we struggled to ever really do that. And I think now all we want to do is get to know Arteta, the tactician. And that'll be interesting. And Clive, that leads to a part of the conversation that is going to be purely speculative, but I think is worth some speculation. If you just had to guess, if you just had to sort of go out and guess, he did talk a little bit about Wenger and Pep being very different, that he learned totally different things from the two of them, and that he wants to be his own man. And I believe that. I think the hope for a lot of fans, if you said, why do you think this will work? What is your trust in this? The hope is sort of that the Pep Stardust will rub off and that he will be a version of Pep. But I'm curious to get your take on whether you expect that. Out of purely nothing but guesswork, is there a tactical philosophy you anticipate seeing from Arteta?
Well, I can only go on based on what I've sort of read and videos I've seen, and I maybe a bit of what I would hope to see. I firmly believe that 4-3-3 is the modern way. With a 6 and 2 8s and wide forwards and a rolling pivot, right? I prefer that. I prefer to have speed, intensity on the pitch, and you know what? He's just left a team that's got all the trophies in their cabinet that does a lot of that. So I think the game is changing into being a much more of a pressing transition game, and if you get pressed, you have to have the ability to repel it, and you have to have the ability to transition and stop transitions. And I think he's going to put a team together to do that. If he doesn't, he will not be winning any of the big trophies, because that's where the game is going. And so you have to adjust. Now, a good coach will always put in a system to suit his players, and I don't want to impose my system on my way of thinking too much on anybody else, because everyone told me that Emery was a 4-2-3-1 man, and I'm not sure he ever was. I just think he was whatever the opposition was going to do, and he went too far the other way. I'm hoping he's this way inclined. I'm hoping so. But he may look at this group and say, I've got a short-term problem, and particularly we've got no left-back. And so we may have to do something else to get the best from this group. So I'm hoping, Elliot, that he is going to play that pressing, transition, quick movement, forward passing style, overloads, crosses, low cutbacks, just, all of the things that we see in some of the better teams in this league. And I hope he can do that with an Arsenal twist.
Well, Paul, so then let me ask you what you expect, and then I have sort of a follow-up. So quickly, do you agree with Clive there? Do you have a different take?
No, I think that's right. I think it'll be a lot of subtle tweaks. And there are areas where he doesn't have too much to work with. Like you just can't fix our centre back situation by fixing the centre backs. He doesn't have the players there to do that, but you can fix around it. So what's around it? Full backs, which was a theme at City, where they've done very interesting things in different seasons, depending on what the problems are. So I think he's going to do something with those full backs, and especially us getting tore up on the transition. So one of the things they've done is pull the full backs either into midfield or even further up the field when they're in possession, making sure those guys are very infield so that if there is a counter, there won't be a counter through the middle. They won't get straight at, say, Torreira at DM. They're going to face Torreira and two full backs. There'll be tactical fouling, and they're going to when the full backs are in position, kind of upfield, they're going to push the counter out to the wing. So I think we'll see. Maybe he'll take a different approach, but I think his full backs are the key to address additional coverage and protection on the counter. He'll do interesting stuff with our wings. At City, they've either pushed them wide or they've used them as basically straight up and down forward wingers. They'll have options with obviously inverted wingers. So I think those are the areas that he can get the most tweaks out of. But as I'm sure we've said, he doesn't have a lot of games to do anything major. So I think it's all going to be about spacing, triggers, and making sure that the team's switching on when we have the ball and then switching on when we lose it. So I do think, though, Guardiola'd struggle to change the overall structure of this team before next summer. So I think he's going to have to keep the scope of change quite narrow and quite focused.
Clive?
Yeah, I was just going to say, someone tweeted me a good line, actually. And he said in the press conference, he said, I'm not going to convince the players I have experience. I'm going to convince them there are certain things we have to do that are non-negotiable, that will bring success. And just listening to Paul, and I'm thinking, what's that? What can he do? What can he do on day one? I'll tell you what he can do. He can make this team work a lot harder, right? Because we are not a hard-working team. And so he can basically say to everyone, we're going to work hard. We're not going to be outworked by anybody. You've got talent, but you don't really earn the right to play. You can do that on day one and see what that gets you. And then we can talk about the things about systems and tweaks and inverted wingers and fullbacks sitting in, and we can do all that stuff. But hold on a minute, we're not even working hard. As a football team, when we lose the ball, we are jogging. We are just letting things happen around us. There's no intensity, so he can do that. And by doing that, you really find out about people. You find out about their limits. You find out where they are. And I think that's key. That's one of the. I think he mentioned the word quick wins. Classic leadership word. When you go in, what are the quick wins? That's a quick win, isn't it? Everyone's going to work. I'm going to be measuring you, and you're not running hard enough. This is a fact. This time last year, you were doing this many Ks, this many sprints. This time this year, you're not. That changes. Do you see what I mean? And that ruthless edge is exactly what we need. No more namby-pamby rubbish. We've all sat there watching people run through our team, getting shots off. So we had the most shots against us in the whole of bleeding Europe. This can't continue. And I listen to people talk about certain players. Oh my goodness, please don't. You have to hear me say, you can't hide from me. Please don't say these things, because you're not watching. You're not watching what's really happening, what players are doing and where they're, and how they're playing and how they're hiding on the pitch. And we will see it when it's right. We can remember these days and say, my goodness, how dark was this? How dark was this? And we are really going to look back and say, crikey, we were trying to make certain people look better than they were, because we're fans. We want to try and see the positive in them where we can. But my goodness, some of them are rubbish and they're not working hard. They're taking Mickey out of the club. And I hope he calls them out, finds them out, and gets them at least to a work rate level that we can all join in on and all respect.
Yeah, look, you guys tried to do the pod without me a couple times. Paul hosted, Tim hosted. Now let me show you how it's really done. Here's what I do, right? Paul?
Yes.
No, that's it. Go.
Oh, okay.
Quality, Elliot, quality.
Sometimes you just need to inject that little bit of tempo.
The old switch of play. I like it. The crossfield ball. Look, everything Clive says is spot on. The only problem is, and this would be a problem no matter who the manager is, you can call players out and say it's not good enough, you're not playing. He has no depth to work with. Like, if he decides he doesn't like what his left back is doing and it's not giving him anything, like,
he's going to have to hold a competition at the stadium.
Yeah. To replace the left back, he doesn't even have to start. It's not much better at right back. At DM, if he doesn't like, say, what Torreira is doing, where does he go? Xhaka's off to wherever.
Can I respond to that, though? Just real quick. The one good thing I would argue is the players that you might say are an issue in terms of energy or focus or work rate or commitment or whatever the soft factors are. Yeah. I don't think they're in those positions particularly. Like, I think. Yeah, I look, see we have, that. Our backline is limited in talent. You're not going to fix the talent of our backline. But like, if for example, if Ozil is your problem, we do have people we can put in those roles. You know what I mean?
Kinda. I mean, don't we debate that there's nobody else who can create?
Yeah, maybe you're right. So all right. So what does he do then? Well, how do you address that? Is it as simple as just work with what you got?
As you said, there are areas where he has maybe just enough depth to kind of show a little strength and kind of put one guy in, put one guy out. He's running pretty thin in other areas, and that's where he's just going to have to sell it. The reality is he can't actually dump too many people out of the team for not working. He's got to put a little bit of the fear of God into everybody, but just sell it to people. Sell what? I mean, why wouldn't these players have all played at some stage with their heart in it. So that's his challenge. But I think any manager would struggle with this setup. Bring Guardiola in. He's going to struggle. This is not going to be an easy 6 months.
Let's have that conversation. I kind of disagree because I think if you brought the best football coach in world football into Arsenal, whoever you think that person is, and I hope it's Arteta, but whoever it is, I think this team is roughly the fourth best team in the Premier League. And maybe it finishes fifth, maybe it finishes third, maybe it finishes fourth. I mean, and by the way, in a standard year, just hear me out for a second.
Probably the 18th.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, all right, I can't evaluate that. But like, what I'm saying is that in a standard year where fourth is, 76 points or 74 points or whatever the hell it is, yeah, no, it's not. But like in a year like this where it's going to be, and maybe I've just invented that number, but where 62 points might get you fourth place, I think we should be there or thereabouts. I think what I'm saying is I do believe that more intelligence in how we're spaced across the pitch, more off the ball focus in terms of where players should be when they don't have the ball. I think this can be fixed. I think more focus on playing in the parts of the pitch where we have quality and keeping the ball away from the parts of the pitch where we don't. Like, I think there are fixes. I'm not saying they're fixes that make us great. I think there are fixes that make us pretty good, okay, because, I mean, this is an okay team, and I admit this is a team with tons of flaws, but Manchester United have tons of flaws, and Chelsea have flaws, and Spurs have flaws, and I mean, there's a reason that they're struggling and still ahead of us because we've just played terribly. So, all right, well, look, let's get excited about Arteta here before we say goodbye. I mean, I think this is really important. And Clive, we talked about in the summer how we were going to win the title because Adidas put out a shirt video.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Best moment of the season.
Yeah, well, to be fair, every Adidas video has smashed it. And I have to admit, when the coach doesn't connect with you, the whole club feels at arm's length from the fans. You can hate a player in the team. God knows I have. I'm kidding, but not really. But like, you can hate a player or two in the team and still love the team and still find things to love about it. When you cannot connect to the coach, somehow the whole team feels at arm's length. And Arteta coming in today felt like wrapping the team around me like a blanket again. Felt like that Adidas video in a way. It just felt like a relief. And Freddie gave a little of that, but because you knew he wasn't the guy, I wasn't able to buy into it. this is at least, and this could fail. That doesn't mean it won't fail. But at a minimum, I feel back in the fold, if that makes sense. Am I explaining this in a way that makes sense? And do you get that same feeling, the feeling that the club and the fans can sort of rejoin each other now that there is a communicator? And I sort of have always dismissed the idea that you should hire a guy because he's got Arsenal DNA, whatever that means, or he has a history with the club. But to be fair, given the disenchantment between fans and players and club, this does feel like an important reconnection to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive reconnection. I wanted Klopp many years ago for just this reason, but this is better in some ways because we have an affiliation with the guy. You know, when Arteta played, I used to critique him. I thought he was too negative. I thought he got praise more than he should have done. And I've listened to the last 2 or 3 years and people praising him, you know, massively when he's not really done anything in the coaching world. I mean, you know, Wenger praised him, Pochettino wanted him at Spurs, and Pep was desperate to get him at Man City. I'm thinking, hold on a minute, who is this guy? Do you know what I mean? And everywhere you turn, everyone is so positive about him. You know, Arsenal people who are critical of the club are talking about this guy in such a positive way, and I'm thinking, okay, how good is he? Well, today, that's day one. That is a great start, and I just can't believe how you can get so much right in one day. You know, just really capture the whole problem.
And all off the cuff, Clive. It's like I was waiting for a prepared statement. He had a couple of lines that were clearly prepared, but then everything else was just free flow, like a Wenger can. Just all
Absolutely.
Off the cuff, natural. You could see he didn't blink for a moment. This was him and his philosophy. I was blown away. I was expecting good things, and I was blown away.
Well, when you believe in something, when you believe in a style, a way of working, an approach, you don't have to recite it. You don't have to rehearse it. You don't have to learn it. It's who you are. You know, when you have a style of coaching and working and teaching people, you become an obsessive teacher. It's who you are. This is the most easiest thing to talk about for someone who's like that. You know, it's so easy, you know, because that's your life. That's how you operate. It's a way of operating. And he obviously does this. This is not difficult for him. You know, all he needs to do is understand the environment so he can do it within this environment. And that's what he's focusing on.
And
so
he's a beautiful mix of silk and steel, Clive. You know what I mean? Like he 75%, it's all kind of beautiful fields, fluffy bunnies, and then 25% was, of course, if I have to slit your throat, I will.
Yeah, exactly. And he did this, by the way. So I can't quite remember Emery's first interview. And maybe it's not a fair comparison because, you know, he struggled with the language, etc. But I don't remember seeing that press conference anyone next to him on that desk. He did that on his own. And so he's come out there on his own. No row, no Edu. They do their separate interview. They can talk about the organisation and connection and the organisation chart and technical director, and we've heard that stuff before. He sat there on his own, no help. This is me. I've never managed a game. Bring it. What have you got? And he dealt with them all. And he dealt with us all. And we're all walking away from it thinking, wow, this has got potential. Now, we're going on to what you spoke about earlier Paul, what you spoke about around the difficult job he's going to have. Yep, our centre-half still can't sprint. One of our centre-halves defends from the bank of friendship. He's that deep, right? So we've got issues. Some of them are coachable, some of them are not. I think some of them are very much not coachable, but there's some core fundamentals you can bring in, and which I'm hopeful he's going to do. You know, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he decides is the priority.
So let me ask you this, Paul. One of the things so I watched the Raul and Edu interview, and look, I don't want to make this a downer podcast, which is a shame because that's sort of just what I do, and now I have to find another way to do it. But no, all kidding aside, like I watched the Raul and Edu interview, and I got to level with you. Like, I don't particularly care what Raul has to say right now. I am not convinced by him. Maybe you are, maybe other people are, and that's great. And I'm not here to argue and say you're wrong. For me, I sort of get strong charlatan vibes off him, but whatever, it's fine. But one thing that did come through in that interview pretty clearly is him saying, like, we needed to meet him and know that he was okay with the structure, the technical director of football kind of structure, and he was, and that's good. And he kind of emphasized that 8 different ways. Do you worry at all about the very clear intent this club has on creating this structure where the coach is just the head coach? And it's one we were all in favor of and believe in, but do you feel that maybe there's not enough fluidity to it, that it's not symbiotic enough? Do I believe that Klopp has a say in what players come to Liverpool? I do. Do I think Pep has a say in who goes to Manchester City? I absolutely do, or at least in the profile of those players. How important is it that Arteta has a voice in that room, and do you think that the structure of the club is set up to give him one?
I think it's very important he has a voice in the room, especially when you've got a tiny budget and no wiggle room and no room for screw-ups. What I think's a little different is, and we saw it in the press conference, his ability to communicate surpasses anybody else's in that room. When it doesn't matter what your business card says, when you're good enough, when you have the it factor. So yeah, I think all of that's a concern. I would put my money that Arteta can sit in a room with those guys and tell them why they need to do what he thinks they need to do. They can't turn around to him on the one hand and say, we've got a very limited budget, and on the other hand, tell him that the players he wants, we're not going to get those. We're going to get him a facsimile of them, and it'll be good enough. I think they blew that with Emery. We might have had more money and more scope, and they had more credibility to come in and tell him what they thought he needed. I don't know. I think Arteta has them by the balls right now. So I think he's got a lot of say right up and down the line for 2 reasons. They don't have the budget to tell him that they can kind of give him what he wants. And his ability to communicate his ideas and what he requires is beyond their conception of football. I mean, even Edu, a strong footballing guy with his own clear ideas, I'm not sure I've ever seen anything from him that allows him to communicate his footballing ideas more strongly than Arteta. And which one of them has just been at the world's most world-class footballing operation where everything is done to the nth degree. There's no margin for error, and has the input of the greatest and latest cutting-edge tactics. I don't know. I think throwaway business cards. I think Arteta is one of those guys who will be able to get what he wants up and down the organization because of the crispness, cleanness of his ability to tell them what he wants and what he needs.
Clive, I mean, do you have a feeling on how much authority he's going to have within the club, and as that relates to sort of Edu and Raul listening to him and what he tells them he needs?
Well, it's obvious that we don't fully trust Raul and Edu yet, because we don't really. What can we judge them on?
Well, I'm going to do the interrupting thing just real quick. The one thing about Edu,
okay.
It's not that I don't trust Edu. I just don't know enough yet. And like watching the Raul and Edu interview was frustrating for me because like Edu was getting like the reek treatment from Game of Thrones off of Raul, who just kept interrupting him. Ironic that I say that in the middle of an interruption. It dawns on me. This is what they call self-awareness. Well, would that make me, who's the guy who beat up Reek and Bolton? Ramsey Bolton, that's it. Am I Ramsey Bolton? No, but my point is just like he wouldn't let him talk. He kind of wanted to do all the talking. So I don't know. I just wanted to clarify that like I don't have a problem with Edu yet because I just don't know it. But the Raul part, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you know what, mate? I think I don't want you to walk away with that interview as the number one thing today. I'm not going to let you.
No, of course not. No,
I'm not going to let you. Right?
And I won't. Yep.
Because we've just seen a head coach come in. You know, I've always spoke about organizational design and structure and the importance of not having a single point of failure. And I'm going to not go back at all those words, but I've not felt what I felt today for a long time. You know, so and I don't care about Raul and Edu. Raul, do your job. Get the right players in, get the right scouting in place, do your job. Get the right analysts around. Make sure he has all the support he needs to deliver on some of the words that he articulated today. That's your job. I don't care. I don't want to hear your voice. Not interested anymore, because as far as I'm concerned, you have work to do Some of the recruitment decisions, not all his, but some of the recruitment decisions over the last 5-6 years have been shocking, absolutely shocking. How we've sold players, how we've retained players, that's on the club, right? And we cannot have potentially one of the most sought-after young coaches come into our club, which seems to be the right fit, and we blow it because we haven't got the right decision makers in the background. That needs to improve, and I'm not putting that all on the youngest coach in the Premier League, at 37 years of age, wherever he is. We need to support him as a club. It's the most important thing, and it's even, I said that before I heard this interview today. Now I've got a bit more insight into the manager. I'm even more adamant. We better do it, or we can forget all this Arsenal class rubbish. We need to do it because we've not treated our own people with class in the last couple of years. We've not treated our fan base with class the last couple of years. So all those values need to be absolutely returned and repaired. And so how we treat this guy, there are going to be a lot of people watching that, watching this and watching this whole situation. And so as far as I'm concerned, do your job. Make sure this guy's supported properly with the right tools so he can deliver on what he said, and deliver for all of us, really, because we've had a rough time lately.
Yeah, well, so can I give you my unusual, very optimistic, positive take on why I really don't think this will fail?
Go for it, man.
So a coach is really two things: his ideas and his ability to communicate those ideas. Do you think that's sort of a fair representation of what a coach does? A coach has ideas about the football that should be played, and then he has to communicate those ideas. His ideas can be good. If his communication is bad, he fails. His ideas can be bad. If his ideas are bad, he fails, period. So you could have guys like Tim Sherwood, who has both bad ideas and is a complete clown and therefore cannot coach. You can have a guy like Unai Emery, who maybe had bad ideas and maybe had some good ideas, but we'll never know because he clearly couldn't communicate them, and so he fails. I already believe that Arteta can communicate his ideas. And we know a few reasons for that. First of all, just seeing him today, have you ever seen a coach command the attention and authority and respect in a press conference the way he just did and not be a good coach? Like, the funny thing is, when I think of the coaches who are bad, they're either dinosaurs with stupid ideas about football or they come across as buffoons when they talk. There are very few beautifully articulate, passionate, intelligent, erudite coaches who just aren't good at coaching that I can think of. I'm sure there's some, but not many come to mind. Now, here's why I think I struggle to see this failing. There's no way Pep kept Arteta as his assistant if Arteta has bad ideas about football, if Arteta doesn't want to play the right kind of football, the good kind of football, the successful kind of football, the progressive, modern football. He must like that football if Pep
even
wanted to
promoted him through his coaching ranks.
Yes. So he must see football in a way that Pep does, and I'm fine with that. So I cannot believe his ideas are bad. Another story that kept coming out of City is that players like Raheem Sterling, players who improved at City. Who was the coach that did a lot of individual work with individual players and improving them? Arteta is credited with a lot of that. So if I believe that his ideas are good, and I believe that he can communicate, that really eliminates the two biggest pillars upon which coaching success stands: communication and good tactical ideology. And I believe he has those things. And so, look, there are a lot of things that can go wrong along the way. You can get unlucky. You can have a bad group that can't win, that can't play, that won't play. You fail a lot early, and people give up on you before you have a chance. I mean, it nearly happened to Alex Ferguson, right? I mean, that can happen. He's got a very young, talented group that if he can work with them and build them up, if you look at Guendouzi, if you look at hopefully Tierney and Bellerin, we'll see, and Pepe and Saka and Martinelli and Saliba coming in. I think about Ferguson. I just mentioned him, and you think of the class he had come in and lead him to his greatest period of success. Maybe Arteta can ape some of that with the young players in the team and just augment it with some experience here and there. But his ideology surely, football philosophy surely is right. His communication surely seems right. And on those two pillars, I believe success stands. So, Paul, talk me down from that euphoria. Is that a reasonable reason for optimism in spite of his lack of experience in this job?
I think it is. I think there's one other area that kind of joins those two, which is that emotional intelligence. The reading of where you're at and what you need as the season kind of the ups and downs of the season come along. You can have great ideas, you can be a good communicator, but you need that other piece, that the overarching connection, that emotional ability to know where you're at and what's needed next. And somebody like a Klopp in particular, you see that one of the things he is a conduit for the emotion of the team, and where they're at and what the next game means and the framing of it. And Guardiola is another one who's superb at explaining to everybody why every next game matters, why every next practice matters. So he's one kind of coach where you have that emphasis on everything's important all the time. Whereas what's brilliant about Klopp is he frames the overall narrative of the season, and that third piece, that emotional connection of knowing where you're at in the journey of the season, framing every bad result, but not just for the team, which is what we automatically expect. Also in the press conferences, with the media, with the fans, telling them why bad is good, telling them why a failure is an opportunity, tell them why what just went wrong was a necessary part of the process to get you to where you're going. And time will tell whether he has that, but he does. Mikel Arteta has the it factor, and he'll pull those three things together.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And by the way, as more and more of these quotes come out and you look at them in writing, like here's one that it's just something we've been talking about on this pod. I've been saying this in the pod nonstop when we talked about Emery and just how the players seemed confused with all the changing. And Arteta says, football is about habit and angles. It is much more simple for a player if you can process the image of where your teammate will be before receiving the ball. If I am in the kitchen and I know the glasses are always in this cupboard, I get my glass of water more quickly. That's the football we need. Players to know where they're supposed to be, know what their teammates are doing before they do it. And that is Pep Guardiola football. I mean, that's right out of Pep Confidential. Clive, I'll give you the final word. I won't give you the final word, actually. I'm going to give you a final concept here that we're all going to weigh in on. We did this on yesterday's pod, but I want to reiterate it. The Patreon pod, we covered this a little bit, but just super, super quickly. What are the metrics you will use to evaluate this coach this season? What are your expectations, and how will you judge him?
I will judge him by how people are reacting to him. I think that's really important. In the end, how people react and engage with you will either lift you up or they'll take you down. And so I'm reading something now where 4 or 5 of the dressing room want to leave. That's because they don't feel like they're the clear direction, or they don't feel a reaction and connection to the club in some way. So I'm looking to see how he can change some of that for ones that I would like to see stay. And I'm looking to see how everybody, all the people listening and the fans in the stadium, I want to see how they react to his ability to articulate the story of the club, and articulate the story of the game to the players. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say something annoying, but I don't really care about the results at all the rest of this season, as long as we don't get relegated.
Yeah, me too.
If I see a system that he is trying to implement and a way of playing football that he is trying to get these players to understand, and over the course of the season I see that working and taking hold, and that we look like a better team in May than we are today, which, let's face it, he couldn't be teed up for that to be easier to do, then I will be satisfied. I think that is good enough. We touched on this in the Patreon pod, but I see a lot of Klopp similarities in the sense that you've got a guy coming in mid-season of a lost season, bringing a philosophy that could bear fruit starting next season, but he kind of has a free hit on just implementing it starting now. I know he said he doesn't see it that way. He needs to win football games, but I think he has a lot of latitude this season, and unless it really bottoms out to such a degree that he just seems in over his head, I think it should be fine. Paul, let's do something.
Elliot,
yeah.
So, Elliot, do you agree, or do you both agree? Because you were both, you both always liked Arteta, but do you agree that now is a better time than it was maybe 18 months ago?
You talked me into that yesterday on the pod. I kind of thought no, because I was like, the club feels more like a mess. I have less faith in Raul. I have less faith in some of these players. I think, we're a weird balance of inexperience and overage players. But you talked me into it, because I think that there is a lot less expectation that, it's always darkest before the dawn, you have nowhere to go but up, whatever aphorism you want to use. Like, yeah, you talked me into the idea that this is probably a better time for him than it would have been. Would I have preferred that they hired him a year and a half ago and we didn't have the Emery era? I still think yes. But, that's just because I did not enjoy the Emery era, in case I have not been clear about that. But let's do something fun to end this. Paul, just real quick, give me a couple of things. First of all, give me your prediction on league table finish and cup finishes the rest of the year.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Could be anything. And I don't think there's anything that drives it in a particular direction. It could be anything.
That is true. It couldn't be anything. I think we're mathematically eliminated from finishing first or something. But.
Yeah. I think we'll make the Europa League places.
6th, roughly, thereabout?
Yeah.
And what about FA Cup?
FA Cup. Yeah, you see, we could definitely have a go at that and a run at that. So semis are better. Is that a prediction?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Anything else?
Europa League.
That old thing. No, we could have I think we'll suddenly perk up for that. Certainly semis are better. I think we'll make the final and lose.
It has stronger teams in it this season than it has in a long, long time. So we're going to have to sort of duck, dive, dodge, and duck, as they say in dodgeball. All right, so Paul, here comes another one. Who is the player who will most thrive under Arteta, and who is the player who maybe will lose prominence or most fall away from the first team picture under Arteta?
Player who will gain the most will be Torreira.
That's not the correct answer, but I like it.
I can give you reasons why. Pep was a DM. Who gives a shit? Arteta wasn't a DM, but became our DM. It's the key to our centre backs, our defence, not getting done on the counter and everything ahead of it. Torreira has absolute potential there, and it's been lost. And Arteta's got to start somewhere.
Midfield metronome, right? Like he can tell Torreira, just slide here, be available, move it quickly. He can give him some of that.
And Torreira's basically there. That's kind of, he started as a guy who was doing all of that, and then it got lost. Hopefully we stop asking him to do 2 jobs in every second different game. Be a 10 today, and tomorrow be a kind of a DM, but a shared DM with somebody else. So City have typically had an actual DM with 2 players ahead of them. So they don't always have this double pivot structure. So I think there'll be clarity there for Torreira, and all sorts of reasons why Arteta is the man to settle Torreira down to what he was doing for us before and take it to a higher level.
Who will fade away?
Yeah. I think there's got to be a reckoning with it comes out of Ozil or I assume
he was very strong in his comments about needing to get Ozil to work for him, and that it was important that he get the best out of Ozil.
Yeah, but then when Ozil doesn't deliver,
fair enough.
So everybody will get a chance to fail, as I think somebody said on the podcast, or should have a little while ago. But I think it's between him. It has to be the big guys you look at. So there's Laka, Auba. It could be Auba because. Centre forward is something that Pep has often sacrificed to the system. Question is where you get your goals from. You can do that at Barcelona with a whole bunch of other people that can score goals. We have nobody else who scores goals. So I think Laka, Auba,
okay.
I don't. Yeah.
So one of those.
Probably Ozil.
Okay. Probably Ozil. Okay.
Clive,
I love
Ozil.
Who will be the
to see him make him
thriver?
tick.
And who will be the diver?
I think the thriver will be Pepe.
Correct. That's the right answer.
The reason why, if you looked at Man City's game plan last week, it was just basically to stop him. He's already started to change people's analysis of Arsenal. And they played Foden in that corner, and they really triple-teamed him in that side. and worked very hard around him. So that means that Arteta, who probably set up the game plan, already likes him. And if you watch the West Ham game and the other games this year in patches, you can't help but see there's something there if he's allowed to have the time to develop. So I think he will be the one that thrives the most. And as for Diver, I don't know. I mean, we've got so many people that are pretty average. So I don't want to pick anyone in particular. I think it will be interesting to see how Guendouzi adapts to this guy, because he's got potential on the ball, but off the ball, he may as well be sitting next to me while I'm doing this podcast, because he's not doing it. Right?
That would make, if we can get him on the pod, I mean, I don't even know if The Athletic can make that happen, but if we can get him on the pod, that'd be awesome.
And he has to care about that, and he does in patches, and there's so much there, and but he's also got lots missing. Could he be an opportunity to get some funds in, or is he going to be an opportunity to play properly? And I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch his development, because we're talking about a coach who develops people individually. There's a lot to work with Torreira, Guendouzi, Pepe, for example. Just the three that are really quite close to being something without fully convincing any of us. So that's going to be a challenge. I want to see how he addresses that.
Yeah, I think my thriver is definitely Pepe. And look, I'm going to go for the ultimate reach here, but I just think given the work he did with Sterling and the importance of Sterling to their system and what Sterling did at City, a tricky, dribbly winger who played as an inverted winger, got close to the box, received the ball, on the edge of the box, in the channel, in the half space, attacked the box from close range and either delivered or scored. I think he's going to try to get Pepe playing that way more. Now, whether Pepe can thrive that way, we'll see, but I think that's something that he will look to do, and I see that. I think maybe the person who will not thrive is Lacazette. I think hard choices have to be made with the squad, and one of the hard choices is which striker do you play. And I think if you're only picking one, as much as I like Lacazette, and I want to be clear, I like him a lot, I still think you pick Aubameyang, and I think he will do that. So that's sort of where I think he'll come down on that. One last thing. I have a weird feeling that we might see something strange happen in midfield. If I had to pick a weird prediction, it would be we might see a player come into midfield that we didn't expect. I think this midfield needs athleticism. It needs an injection of something. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe Maitland-Niles did finally get a midfield role. I mean, assuming we actually have someone to play right back, or that he tries to put someone into midfield. There is no Kevin De Bruyne in this team. Maybe he will try to get Guendouzi playing that way as the 10 who drops in, carries it forward, and distributes. I don't know. I mean,
can I give you a name, Elliot? That could play deep, if you don't mind. Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, that's my point. I think we could see something really unusual, unexpected in midfield. I am bumping up against a hard stop because I'm supposed to be taking care of a baby. Not that is as important as a new manager, but is it cool if we just tie it off there? Yes, I'll take that
like
as a yes.
An umbilical cord, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, the umbilical stump just fell off today, so happy birthday. 8 days in, yeah. Everybody need to know that. Paul's on Twitter, Pause in my pants, thanks, Pause.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC, thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
I'm over the moon. I'm elated. I can't wait to watch it. Is it the best appointment? Who knows? It's an exciting one. It's one that I think has a lot of people happy and feeling connected again. It's the most we can ask for. So it should be a happy holiday. Even if the results don't come, we're talking football again. We're going to start talking football again, and it's long overdue. Can't wait to do it. And Tim will be back on a future pod, and Scott's got an analytics pod coming out for Patreon. Clive's going to do his transfer pods there. Lots of good stuff coming up. And most of all, thank you for listening. We love you. We really do appreciate you being here through the highs and the lows. And I think this is a high, and I feel really good about where we're heading. So we'll leave it there. If you want to sign up for theathletic.com/Clive PAFC, we'd love it if you do that, or come join us at Patreon or whatever. But more than anything, we just hope you're having a great day and enjoying all the Arteta news. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Everton 0.